Yo, what's up, guys? We're back. It's Bad Fantasy, here to talk about some fantasy football. We've got a lot of injuries to touch on. Some guys that are probably available in your league that could make a difference for you, not just in the next week or two, but looks like some long-term prospects as well. Um, we're here to talk about some people you want to add to your team, but I'm about to just get this rant out of the way. Okay, there's a guy that I would want off of my team. So let's just. I've been asked to throw a disclaimer out there that my opinions do not reflect all of Bad Fantasy. Okay, this is my sole opinion. I will also ask that you keep in mind that I have zero tolerance for players that aren't producing. Okay, 2 weeks
Disclaimer
in,
out of the way.
2 weeks in, I have not made hardly any roster moves in my leagues. I am defeated to date. I've had a couple tough matchups. I was like third highest scoring team twice and lost. Okay, like my team's okay. I'm not. I guess I'm just saying I'm not gonna hit the panic button right away. But Kenny Golladay, man, Kenny Golladay is an issue for me. I don't own him, but if I did,
I was about to ask you, do you have him in a league?
I don't own him in any leagues. Okay, I like him as a
Uh-huh.
player. Um, I don't know. I'm looking to get away from him right now, and the reason is I don't think it's going to get any better. I just think he's going to be somebody that you're going to be stuck with if you wait too long, and we're close enough to the draft that that name value could bail you out. Basically, what I'm saying is that I've never really cared what the name is if I'm not getting true value. Sometimes it's the worst thing for your fantasy team to feel like you have to start a guy week in and week out and just watch these like flop games over and over again. Now, if you think Kenny Golladay has more to offer, by all means, I just say it every time that it crosses my mind. Go with your gut, but hear me out. I want to say it was 2 seasons ago. The Giants went 10 games, roughly. I mean, don't quote me on this, but it was right around there, without throwing a touchdown to one of their receivers. Okay, it was awful. Most of those guys are still there. That's a problem. I think this is nothing more than a GM looking at a piece of paper and saying, we don't throw touchdowns to receivers, and Kenny Golladay caught a bunch of them. So that fixes the problem, right? Wrong. So like Kenny
They pay
Galladay's
him
a
a lot of
great
money.
Kenny Galladay's a great receiver. Okay, I just think it's a terrible fit. I think he's somebody that doesn't create separation, and I think there's a quarterback there that's looking for open receivers. If there's a chance, don't get me wrong. This is all an odds game. There's a chance that he develops some chemistry with Daniel Jones. There's a chance that they work it out. I mean, he was openly frustrated week one. I'm assuming with his involvement or lack thereof. So like that's a good thing for your fantasy team, right? Like we might be looking at it and saying like, man, I'm not really a fan of guys that throw fits on the sidelines, but if it gets him more looks, like we're all for it, right? So I just want to say the one thing that I think Kenny Galladay can offer that might get him out of this slump or put him in the spotlight is durability. So Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram miss a lot of time. Darius Slayton has missed some time too. So like his biggest asset right now, if you are gonna ride this out, is durability. I just really, really don't like the fit so far, and I think there's still some guys that you could get that you might be interested in that might get you out of that feeling you have in your chest where it's like, man, I really like might want to start somebody else, but that's Kenny freaking Galladay, man. So like all I'm saying is that if you're in like dynasty leagues or keeper leagues, I'm gonna be looking into more. I might be looking to move him for one of these rookies that's already shown a couple good games or some volume. Like I am interested in, um, like Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. I mean, there's some guys in that range that I'm looking at that might look a little better now than they did going into draft season that you could get some long-term value out of and get away from a guy that's in a bad situation that's not going to change because like Josh said, like they paid him a lot of money. He's got a contract. He's going to be there for some, 4 years I think it was.
Yeah, I don't know how much they're committed to of that. You know, that always gets weird, and it seems like they can always change those contracts. There's always the option of a trade at some point down the line if what you're saying is true and it truly didn't work out.
Or if it's
Um,
bad enough, you can cut a guy for like a lower dead cap hit If sometimes those contracts are geared that way too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's probably like one more Jason, like ripping Jason Garrett on the sidelines. He's probably one more time away from that, from like catching balls from Stafford again over in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, could be. One target that stands out to me that I think has a lot of upside to offer that could still be valued in that same range that stood out to me was an OBJ. So like maybe you don't know when he's going to come back yet, and that's also a problem that you'd have to deal with. But like if I could get an OBJ value back for Kenny Golladay right now, I'm doing it. Like I'm pulling the trigger. But I'm also putting some feelers out. Our league's not set up this way, but in standard leagues, it takes 2 days for a trade to clear, right? So like I'm trying to do that tonight, tomorrow morning. Like I'm trying to get some offers out there. I'm sending messages to guys, and I'm just trying to figure out like if anyone else is valuing Kenny Golladay at where you drafted him, and if you can get something comparable in return, I'm doing it, man. I'm doing it. Like I said, for redraft, you're probably trying to get like an OBJ out of the deal. There were a couple other receivers in that area that kind of crossed my mind, but that's just the best. That's just the best scenario for me. Like you'll take the stress of not knowing when he's going to play. Maybe that guy's frustrated with him too. But I just had to get that off my chest, man. Like when I see a guy not producing for 2-3 weeks and I have to put him in my lineup, like as well as anybody, you're out of here. Like that's it.
Yeah, part of the problem probably would be that people that drafted him probably do feel like they need to have him in their lineup, right?
Oh yeah.
Where they took him, and the name value, of course, that always plays a factor. It's like, why do people keep starting Rondale? I don't know. He should be on your bench, but you can't help yourself. You're going to keep playing. You know?
Exactly.
I hear you. I mean, I hear your look. You don't have to really sell me on anything tied to Daniel Jones, and you know that. Like, I am not. If it's someone, if you ask me if I like a receiver, my first question usually is, does he play for the Giants? Kenny Golladay, like you said, I love the player. I think he's a great talent. I never was interested in drafting him. I mean, everybody has their price. If he would have went low enough, I probably would have drafted him. He didn't in our leagues, but yeah, I'm worried about his production as well. But I can see a path where it gets better, just because he hasn't been there very long, and he was also banged up all throughout camp, and him and Daniel Jones haven't played much together. It's not even that surprising to me that there was frustration on the sidelines. I also am not so confident in the fact that it might get better that I want to necessarily go buy that opportunity either. Like, I don't necessarily want to go trade for him either. So even though I don't necessarily know if I agree completely with, like, I'm not totally on your side, that I'm like super out of it. At the same time, I'm not really like trying to buy that either, you know? So I don't know. I'm somewhere in between. I could see this turning around and working out, but I could also see this down the road being a really bad situation or just not getting any better. And I know why you're saying fix it now, because you believe it's not going to get any better. And if this does go on for another 2 weeks, then it's going to be too late. Like you'll obviously still be able to trade him for something probably, but the value will just be so diminished. So
yeah, like
if you're on the side of Dub's camp where you feel like it's not going to get any better, it would be better to react now to that.
I totally agree. I think that the fit on the sidelines to me says that Kenny thinks he's good to go. So like I understand like maybe there's still some chemistry stuff, but as far as like physically prepared to play the game, like I feel like he thinks he's good to go.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just I don't know how hard I don't know that I want to go all the way in on this, but like I'm scrolling through here and there's a list of receivers that have outscored Kenny Golladay through 2 weeks. Okay.
You got some names that might surprise me that you would do it.
Well, so there's some that and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's some that I'll just list a few that stand out to me that are either were around his draft stock or like significantly after. Okay. Cooper Kupp, #1 receiver in fantasy right now.
Oh, that's an easy one. That's an easy one.
Receiver #3, Deebo Samuel. He went like what, 2-3 rounds later?
He was going pretty late. He
was going after Ayuk even.
Mike Williams, a couple rounds after.
Mike Williams. I mean, it only takes one big game to be that high, right?
I would take Mike Williams.
Mike Williams, Marquise Brown, Brandon Cooks, Sterling Shepard. He plays for the Giants.
Sterling Shepard. Hey man, if you want Sterling Shepard, He is available.
Marvin Jones, Zach Pascal, Rondale Moore. That name
Mhm.
sounds familiar. KJ Osborne also sounds familiar. I mean, like we could just
Just a note.
there's just a list of guys. Quintez Cephas, former teammate, guy that was not on the radar. Not one Detroit receiver was on the radar. He's outscored him through 2 weeks. So like, I don't know. There's more. I could keep going, but like I'm just saying,
I
I
hear you.
don't think it gets better. I mean, Evan Ingram should be coming back too. So like, opportunity gets worse before it gets better.
I think the little bit of glimmer of hope that I'm holding on to, and there's not much of it to begin with. Like I said, it's Daniel Jones, so I'm already not interested. But Golladay made a couple of nice grabs in week one that like caught my attention. They kind of stood out, and but then he also had like a drop that hit his fingers. Should have had it and dropped it too. Could just be a timing thing that he's got going on with Daniel Jones right now, or it could just be the fact that it's just going to be bad all year. I mean, what would be a failure of a season for him as far as like what he finishes? Anything outside of top 24 for wide receivers? Or do you give him like flex territory? Like, do you give him that much chain?
I mean, I think general rule it'd be fair if you gave a guy a round up and a round down from draft stock. So like I think he was being drafted like wide receiver 3 territory. I think if he finishes
Yeah.
outside of like wide receiver 30, 35, like that's a flat out bust. I think you were hoping for a lot better than that though. I mean, he's talented. He's a good receiver. He put up a lot of touchdowns. Like there was opportunity, there was value there. I get it, but
Right. I hear you. All right, fair enough. You're out on the Kenny Galladay thing.
I'm out on
Out of
him,
that
and
business.
I want to get as much as I can from out of him before it gets too bad. Like the thing is like you're saying, if you give it 2 more weeks, like okay,
It's too late.
it
If it keeps going like this, it's too late at that point.
well if you give it 2 more weeks, then you are looking. And it sounds so ridiculous now, but if you give it 2 more weeks, you are looking at taking like a Marquise Brown, Henry Ruggs if they have another good
Maybe.
game, a Mike Williams, like guys that were just totally off the radar, or like rounds and rounds after. And this might be
If
the
this
last
if
week I care about draft stock, right? Like where there's going to be a time where it no longer matters at all. But like week 2,
Yeah. Honestly, if this goes for one more week like this, like if Galladay has one more bad week, and Hollywood Brown, Mike Williams has another week of what they've been doing, it's already too late by that time. Like it's too late as soon as Sunday, it might be too late.
yeah, because a big part of fantasy too is riding the wave. Like if you have a guy that's hot, Mike Williams might be a bust the second half of the season, but if you're riding those points now, like there's a lot of value there.
Yeah, well, it's all about what you believe in and what you don't. Some of those guys might be worth buying into now if you can get them at the right price because people surprise every year too with their production. Nobody's looking at Hollywood Brown right now for the most part. Most people aren't looking at him or Mike Williams and thinking like, oh yeah, these 2 weeks, this is what this guy is, because we have previous years of them not being that. But you remember when Devontae Parker sucked for like 3 or 4 years and he was hyped a little bit every year and he sucked and he sucked and he sucked and then he had that really like solid year.
Yeah,
Like that shit happens, man.
for sure.
Um,
The Giants
Gallad, or
play
I
the
mean,
Falcons at home. Like the Giants are at home against the
is that
Falcons
the
this week.
matchup?
That's
Okay,
that's my last strike.
that's fair. I mean, that's that's fair. Um, and that'll be another week of them practicing, and they just had that yelling match that now has been made a news story. So maybe, hopefully, you would see them kind of turn things around this week. And if it's another week of bad, if it's 6 targets again, I mean, don't expect Daniel Jones to be efficient. So like, if Galladay gets 6 targets, if that happens for another week, yeah, I'm certainly sweating. I mean, I already am, but I might be closer to how you're feeling 1 week from now.
Yeah. All
All
right.
right,
Well, I
well,
feel a
you've
little
ripped on
better.
Galladay.
I feel a little better.
Just hating on these ex-Lions.
Listen, listen, listen. A
Hmm.
lot of ex-Lions find success elsewhere. Okay. At some point, you become callous to it. I liked him in Detroit. The thing about it for me that might add a little salt to the situation is that the Lions offered him a pretty nice contract and he turned it down. He wanted the money. He got the money and then he's throwing a fit on the sideline week 1. It's like, bro, this is what you wanted. You
I
wanted
hear
to
you.
go to a
That's a
desperate team.
fact. Yeah, you can only feel so bad for a guy, right? I mean, he went where the money was, and did you not think about who was going to be throwing you the ball and
Yeah.
who was the offensive coordinator? Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. All right. That's out of
All
the
right,
way.
you feel better?
So yeah. So now we're gonna switch gears, get a little more positive here. Some people that we want on our teams. That would be a nice change of pace here. Sorry.
Well, no, we should keep it negative. Let's talk about the injuries.
Okay. Let's do it. We got a
Let's just stay on this negative train.
we got a whole laundry list of injuries to
Oh
talk
my
about.
God, man. How much time do we have, bro? It's the 21st right now. It's gonna be the 22nd by the time we're done.
Right.
So let's just go. Let's just kind of do this in order, so it makes a little bit of sense. Let's just go quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, in that order, I suppose, because that's just how I have it written down. So the first one on the list here for me is Ben Roethlisberger. It was a pec strain. Pro Football Doc. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should, or someone like him. There's plenty of these doctors now that have Twitter accounts that are building their brand. He's just somebody that I happen to have been following for years. That I trust his opinion because he's been pretty accurate over the years. Um, Pec strain, and he believes that Roethlisberger should be fine to play this week. It's not solely just because the injury is not at all serious. I mean, I think it somewhat is. It's also just partly that it's Roethlisberger, and we expect him to play through it. But it's a little bit concerning because that offense already wasn't looking all that great to me. To be honest, they kind of looked like they did the second half of last year, where like Ben's arm, it seemed like it was maybe wearing. The offensive line doesn't give him any time. It just I don't have a lot of good feelings about the Steelers' offense right now. Doesn't necessarily mean that the wide receivers are going to be bad for fantasy or Harris is going to be bad. Maybe I'm just talking more in like a real football sense. But it's concerning because I think it can lead to more inconsistency than what you would be used to out of a Steelers offense. Tyrod Taylor is going to be out as well for definitely for this week with a hamstring injury, but potentially for like a month. We could be like 3 weeks, 4 weeks of not seeing any Tyrod Taylor. So that's a little bit unfortunate because Houston was actually surprising everybody with the play. And I don't know if that's going to change things or not. What is that? Just real quick, we weren't really interested in those running backs in Houston anyway. But what does that make you think about Brandon Cooks? He's probably the only one worth really commenting on. Are you still willing to put him in a flex, or is this week? Are you going to hold this week and kind of see how that plays out? Maybe
Well, my boy Nico Collins hit the IR after this
he's
week.
out. He is out. Yep.
So
IR is only 3 weeks now. It's 3 week minimum. It's not 6 weeks anymore. But yeah, he's out.
he's out. I mean, there's something to be said about his ability as a player. Like he, we talked about it a little bit. He has been undervalued everywhere he's been. He runs all the routes. He is pretty good after the catch. So like, there's still some value there. Um, the real the hidden question there is like, do you think that Tyrod Taylor is better than the next guy? Like, do I? I didn't want to believe it, but like he did look pretty decent. So I do think he takes a little step back, and we were already kind of out on receivers until we saw that week one performance. So like, I don't know, man. I'm not trusting him in my lineup. I don't think, but like if I see one game of Brandon Cooks with Davis Mills out there, like I'll run it. I'll run it. I
Sure.
mean, a flex is like matchup based anyway, or team need. Like if you have some bye weeks, that's going to be a little further down the road than usual. But um, I mean, you're typically going to be using your flex as like obviously like a flex or a week to week thing. So like yeah, if I see it one week
Where you're
with Davis
rotating it.
Mills and they have a good matchup, and I need him in my flex, like I'll do it. But I need to see one game first without Tyrod. I think.
That's where I'm at with it too. If you can afford to wait a week, if you've got a deep enough team, if it's definitely flex territory. I would play him if you had to, but hopefully you have a better option this particular week and you can wait. And hey, if Cooks happens to have another good week, then just be happy about that. Even if you didn't put him in your lineup, just be happy that you could feel confident about playing him here on out. More than likely.
Yeah.
I hope my boy Cooks just continues to cook. So that's Tyrod. So Dalton. So Andy Dalton. He also he has a bone bruise, I believe is what it was listed as, not an ACL or a partial ACL tear. There was some concerns about that, just the way the play looked. It's a bone bruise, but that looks like that's going to be potentially a several week, 3-4 week injury himself. Maybe he surprises and he comes back a little sooner. But that means it's Justin Fields' time, which is interesting because there's just so many implications tied to that quarterback play. I mean, obviously you have the running back with David Montgomery, but we have Allen Robinson, you have Darnell Mooney. Andy Dalton has been trashed online at this point from everybody about his average depth of target and how bad it's been. He's actually been the worst quarterback in the league with his average depth of target. So if you want to buy into those type of statistics, and I mean, you would look at Fields then as potentially a lot more upside for both of those receivers. He had some good moments and he had some bad moments. I don't know how much of his play you got to see in that game that he came in. He had good and bad that he showed. It was a little bit shaky. He had an interception that was absolutely awful. Never should have thrown the ball. But he also threw the ball downfield and gave his receivers some plays. He gave Allen Robinson a chance in the end zone. I saw him have a nice deep connection to Mooney. He also threw another one to Mooney that hit Mooney's hands and he dropped it. So if you have the receivers, I think this is good news. I don't know what it's going to actually mean for the Bears, but I think it's good news for the weapons as far as fantasy is concerned. You got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be good for Mooney. I think it's going to be good for Goodwin too. Like, I'm not going to be surprised if Goodwin has every third or fourth game he has something that gets your attention. I mean, he's a veteran, but also like I kind of mentioned, I think last stream that he was a little outspoken about um, the offense or how they were running things too. Marquise Brown kind of came out and took a shot at Nagy, which was weird. But also, like if he's comfortable and he's outspoken, sometimes the greasy wheel gets greased. So I mean, that's interesting to me. I think the downside to Fields, as far as what we've seen so far, is that could be a hit for Cole Kmet, who seemed to be coming along. He had 7 targets in week 1, down to 1 target, I think, week 2. So that could be a little. It could hurt Kmet's production a little bit, I think, which is a bit of a bummer because he was one of our tight end sleepers that I was looking forward to seeing kind of how that goes.
Yeah.
But anymore too, it does seem like offensive coordinators switch gears over the course of like a 2 or 3 week stretch. They might have some tendencies that they try to break, and then that I mean, I could totally see Komet having a 2 3 week stretch where they're like, well, we want to get our tight end more involved, or we're getting a little predictable. That seems to be a thing too. I guess I'm just saying initial reaction. I hope Komet does stay involved because it looked like he was really coming around. I thought he was doing a lot of good things away from the ball too, so I think he's earned it, and I'm rooting for him.
I like the way he looked in that first week. You and I both did. It's also possible, just kind of tied to what you said. I mean, Fields is going to get all the reps with the ones now, potentially for multiple weeks. So if Komet is something that they want in the game plan, with Fields having more reps and all the practice with the ones, and then obviously the game time, he could become more involved, or not. Maybe he just totally disappears and he's nothing. I don't know. But that's another wait. It's another wait and see. It's not like you need to rush to the waiver wire to try to get Komet or put a bid on him because nobody's caring about him right now.
For sure. I think that offensive line has looked better too. I mean, I think there were some times where Jason Peters looked a little old. I mean, they brought him in from the way I was understanding it, like to compete for the spot or maybe split some time, be a depth piece. He's starting, but there were a couple times too where it looked like he just took a defender out of the play. I mean, I think that veteran presence and awareness is still helping you guys out, and I don't know, man. I think that offense is really interesting with Fields back there.
It's definitely interesting. It's going to be one of the top offenses to pay attention to this week, just because it's such a wild card, and there are some fantasy relevant players there. Wentz. I'm looking at Wentz's name. Fields himself. He's not. What's his ownership? I have it right in front of me. Just give me 1 second here. Oh wow, higher than I thought. 55% in ESPN leagues, so about half of leagues. He himself is interesting because even if he's a little shaky throwing the ball, we've talked about this probably almost every damn live stream we do at this point, but his running ability, it has so much upside that shaky quarterback play as far as throwing the ball can almost not really matter that much if you run it enough. Like if you get 50, if you're averaging 40 to 60 yards on the ground and you can sneak one of those into the end zone running the ball here and there, like that's just upside that you don't get with a lot of other quarterbacks. So um, you and I got to talk about a trade after this. Let's go to Carson Wentz real quick. I was looking at his name. So he sprained both ankles out there running for his life, which you probably want to talk about that for a second because you were watching that game. But the early diagnosis with the sprained ankles, according to Pro Football Doc, I'll just keep referencing him, is that he believes he will still be able to play in Week 3. The mobility is just going to be, as you would imagine, pretty severely limited. So obviously that's not good news, but him being out there, maybe that means that Pittman will still be somebody you could consider throwing in your flex in a deeper league. Otherwise, let's just wait and see it for another week before we consider that. Obviously, Pittman had a bit of a breakout this past week, though. Let's hope that continues. And Pascal gets another touchdown. So I'll let you go and what you think about that.
Yeah, my takeaway from the game, well, takeaways. One, I mean, like this. So the Colts' offensive line has been hyped up quite a bit, and I think there is a lot of talent there. So I'm not saying it's not deserved, but there was some pressure that got to Wentz early. I think it's more of a confidence issue for Wentz, though. I think that a lot of good quarterbacks, some of the best quarterbacks I've seen, have enough pressure to affect them for the game. They call it like ghost pressure too, where they start feeling it when it's not there.
See a ghost.
Yeah, yeah. So I think Wentz got happy feet. He didn't seem comfortable in the pocket, and maybe losing some mobility in a weird way could be good for him if he's forced to sit in the pocket and trust it. And you
It's
know,
kind of funny.
it sounds weird, right? But
No,
like,
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
there were just times where he gave up on the pocket before I felt like he needed to. Um, there's some weird takeaways from that. One, him moving out of the pocket as much as he did, which was almost every play. Um, some of it from the defense, some of it from Wentz, is that I think he missed Mo Alley Cox a few times because he was caught scrambling and looking downfield and trying to figure out how this was all going to unfold. There were some times where I thought Mo Alley Cox was open for with a chance to get some yards and possibly a first down. So I think he suffered. I think that he could have very easily had a game that we'd be talking about this week if things went a little different. I think that it benefit Michael Pittman the most, where Pittman was coming back off of corners. He was like running his route, and then when the scramble started, Pittman did the best job of like finding open space, coming back to his quarterback. Just creating a throwing alley for Carson Wentz. So like that was great for Pittman. I think it was great for the chemistry because it seemed like Wentz was really like gravitating towards him. It looked like he was looking his way quite often. So we'll see how it plays out. I hope that we don't see Wentz running around like that again for a while. But I think it helped. I think it helped the chemistry with Pittman. So anything that you did see or that you might be feeling towards Michael Pittman, I think should stay where it is or improve. I think that wherever you're evaluating him should at least stay where it is or go up some, as long as Wentz is playing. And then I obviously like Pascal has been a slot guy, touchdown guy. I'm not gonna change how I feel about him. I felt pretty good about him for a while now. Until Hilton comes back, I think that is gonna have a big impact on Pascal, but we're not there yet. So there's
It
a
may
big
not be
difference.
all year.
And if that's the
Possibility.
case, like Pascal's a total steal right now. Like I mean, the dude's got 3 touchdowns in 2 games, and he scored 2 or 3 more in the preseason. Like I just don't know what else he has to do to get on teams. Like
Right.
there should be a spot on your roster for him right now. Um,
Currently less than 20% owned in ESPN leagues.
but
Not that we're like super excited about his talent, but just the opportunity, and we're actually seeing it happen for 2 weeks in a row now.
yeah, I mean, fantasy football boils down to stats. So like you don't always have to love every aspect of the situation or the player or the talent, but like if it's turning into points one way or another, whether it's volume, talent,
Right.
opportunity, it's there. it sounds weird, I think, that I brought up Mo Alley Cox, but I think that sometimes you can watch football and it's a lot different than checking a stat sheet. And I think there's a lot more opportunity for Mo Alley Cox in that offense than we've seen on paper.
Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on it then. Let's move on to the next quarterback. We got two more of them. So Tua has bruised ribs, and he is unlikely to play week 3. Don't know beyond that. I know with bruised ribs, we'll bring up a running back that's got a rib situation as well. They do have an injection these players have available to them that they can take to sort of help with the pain, apparently tremendously. But apparently with quarterbacks, it's a special case because of the way they turn and twist their body when they're throwing the ball. So he is unlikely to play at least this week, which means we're going to get some Jacoby Brissett. As far as fantasy implications go for that, I don't know if people outside of deep leagues, I don't know if people were really trying to play Jalen Waddle or Devontae Parker. If you were, I don't necessarily know that I'm like that scared off by it. If it's Jacoby Brissett out there as opposed to Tua, probably for now, we'll see how Jacoby looks this coming up week if he plays. But for now, I'm sort of just like the same. I'm not really like scared by it. I'm also not. I also don't think they're in a better position for it. Do you feel any different about that?
No, I don't think that Brissett's a big downgrade from Tua for the weapons for fantasy implications.
Right.
I agree with that. I think he was a little underrated when the Colts decided to bring Phillip Rivers in. I actually kind of felt bad for Brissett when they signed Rivers. So
Mm-hmm.
like, kind of just got stuck in a bad situation. It's gone under the radar. Um, so no, I mean I'm not giving any of the Dolphins players a big downgrade with Brissett in there. They are playing the Raiders week 3, and I'll just say it one more time. Like, I think the Raiders
Mm-hmm.
defense is underrated. I think that they added a
Okay.
few pieces in spots that they needed it. All I'm saying is that if a Dolphins player has a bad week 3 against the Raiders, like, I'm taking that with a grain of salt. We don't always know
Yeah.
these things, or we don't want to believe them. Maybe we would like to see a bigger sample size because the Raiders have kind of been a role team, for a while. So like, we probably need to see more out of it from them than most other teams. But I do think it's a decent defense too. Um, that would be my biggest concern, though. Yeah, Brissett. No, Brissett's not going to hurt those guys. I don't think.
Same. So Derek Carr is listed as questionable for week 3, but Gruden has already came out and said that he believes Derek Carr will be able to play week 3. He got hurt during that game against the Steelers, and he was able to finish. So we'll assume that he's playing up to this point. It'll just be that's a particular situation that we will just have to obviously monitor. But for now, it seems like Carr is going to play. So let's go ahead and move on to the
He
receivers.
looked pretty good. I mean,
He
like
did.
he used all of his weapons, and I think that made all of them better.
Yeah. Yeah. One or two of those guys we might be bringing up later.
Yeah.
So for the wide receiver injuries, Jarvis Landry, bit of a bummer with not having Odell there. We kind of felt like he was going to be able to be a consistent player for whoever's got him out there. But he's got an MCL sprain, goes to IR, so this is a minimum 3-week injury. He'll be back in 3 weeks, but he's out. In the meantime, I don't think we are at all excited about any of the other weapons over there, whether it's tight ends like Cooper or Njoku or any of those number of wide receivers they've got. They had a player listed as a running back that played wide receiver for them during the game, and I believe led them in in yards in that game. So it's just a very weird, murky situation over there. I'm not excited to play anybody. On top of that, he's supposed to play as well. I guess I forgot to mention him, but Baker also got hurt in that game with a shoulder injury. It was his non-throwing shoulder, and he came back in the game as well. So I would imagine we expect him to be playing, but he's a little banged up as well. I think he may be wearing a brace on his left shoulder from here on out. So he actually had the same injury that Trubisky did, and Trubisky had to have off-season surgery for that just this past year. So, take that for what it is. There's no one we're excited about over there, right? Nobody we're trying to play outside of the running backs, obviously.
Yeah, I think Hunt gets the biggest bump. I'm not excited about any of the targets either. I almost think they're
You there?
forced to run. Huh? Can you hear me?
Oh, you're good, man. I think we were behind for a second. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think Hunt gets the big.
Let's move on to the what a reboot.
No, well, I was just I don't know that it got caught, and it's not a huge deal, but I just think Hunt gets the biggest boost out of the receiver situation in a backwards way. Like they don't have any receivers. Hunt hasn't really been producing as much as I think we both thought he would. So like they're probably going to be running the shit out of the ball. That'd be my guess.